Good afternoon. Welcome to the Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting. Today is September 21st. First item on the agenda is our staff report update by Deborah Owen, City Clerk.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. There's a couple of amendments that will be coming forward or may come forward by Council Member Staggers today. They are at your desk for discussion later if you choose, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Mayor Munson. Anybody here from the Mayor's office to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Audit Committee, no report. Fiscal Committee?
No report.
Land Use Committee?
Yes. Our next Land Use Committee meeting will be a week from today, September 28th. At the last informational, I mentioned that, we're going to spend some time talking about this ordinance dealing with the campgrounds and also deregulation. However, further reflection, I think we might be spending quite a bit of time talking about the campground ordinance. So we're going to delay talking about deregulation in Sioux Falls until our next Land Use Committee after September 28th.
Any questions for Councilor Staggers? Next item on the agenda is Public Service Committee.
We will meet immediately following this meeting. The agenda is on the back of your informational agenda. We have a number of issues to go through, and we'll try to get through those quickly today.
Next item is City Council open discussion. Is there anything? Councilor Knudsen.
Well, today I'm just doing a public service announcement on the wonderful new renovated Orpheum Theater, historic Orpheum Theater downtown, and I just wanted to say that I thought that the Spoon Cat concert the other night was wonderful, and there were a couple other city councilors there too. But it's what I'm really trying to promote is I just want everyone in the world to know that the Orpheum Theater is still looking for more contributions to buy sculptures. Again, they're out in that courtyard that Lloyd Companies gave to the city of Sioux Falls a few years ago. That it's all landscaped, and there's 4 beautiful pedestals, but we don't have any sculptures there. So we're trying to still raise money at the city level and the Orpheum level for those 4 sculptures. It'd be a natural progression, from downtown up into the Orpheum Theater courtyard. And then along the same lines, I'd just like to say that the Sioux Empire Community Theater is getting ready to kick off its season there at that historic theater. And the first play is I Hate Hamlet, which will run the end of October, those 2 weekends at the end of October, and then the first weekend in November. And I'm hoping that one of these days we'll have some more stars from our own staff there on stage. So that's all for today.
Thank you, Councilor Knudsen. Any other items for open discussion?
Yes. I was just going to mention, I hope tonight I only have to introduce one amendment, but we'll see. That one amendment would be to delete the property tax increase for the calendar year 2010. That would save the citizens of Sioux Falls $1,221,036. However, if that amendment is not successful, then the second amendment I would introduce is just to put in the title of the appropriations ordinance that we are actually having a 3% property tax increase. Anybody has any questions?
Okay. Any other topics for discussion for today? Before we move into the presentations, seeing none, we have one presentation today, and it is by Rich Oaksel, our lead internal auditor, and it's a special assessment audit report. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council. Rich Oaksel, lead internal auditor. We're discussing the special assessments audit. You should have a hard copy in front of you. I noticed on your agenda for tonight you have the special assessment role. However, the scope of this audit was specifically the construction type of contracts where they do an improvement and they assess the property owners for that improvement. And I'm not going to read the report to you, but I'm going to briefly summarize it for you, and then I will entertain questions, and if I can't answer them, the city engineer is here also to answer any questions or discuss the report with you. On the very last page of the audit report is a list of there's 8 projects that we looked at. Those are from 2008, and that was kind of the scope of our project. For members of the listening audience, the special assessment process in regard to these construction type of contracts involves an improvement that's done on for example, putting in a curb and gutter or improving a rural roadway into an urban roadway. and you assess the property owners that have property abutting that improvement for the cost of that improvement. And there are two ways that these projects can come into being. Is the city can initiate those, or they can the neighborhood can do a petition process to get these projects started. The three objectives were, number one is to look at the internal controls over the process, and our conclusion was that there are internal controls in place. We had several recommendations to strengthen some controls. Specifically, we encouraged Public Works to have a written policy and procedures. Currently, much of the process is done by one employee, and we suggested that what that employee is doing should be written down and have also a backup employee designated, just in case the primary is absent for permanent or temporary reasons, that there be somebody else that understands the process, that can do the process in their absence, and that what is being done is written down. And also, Excel spreadsheets are used as part of this process to try and figure out what, how much each property owner is going to be assessed. It gets rather complicated to come up with all these costs, and you have to look at the square footage of the property. So they use an Excel spreadsheet. The problem with that is sometimes their errors can creep into spreadsheets, especially as they get more complex or they become linked to many spreadsheets. So we recommend some sort of process for management to mitigate that possibility of error, somebody else to look that over, or possibly if there's some software out there that is available for doing this. Throughout the report, whenever we had a recommendation, you should see the response from Public Works in italics in the report. And we are also pleased to say that Public Works is very responsive to the audit. Even when they disagreed with us, they promptly gave us a response, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate their cooperation throughout the whole audit process. Number two, that the objective was to see if the city was complying with the state law and state and local law. For the most part, we were on these 8 projects, except for one project. It was that North Career Avenue project. According to the way that we interpret the law, or the way we read the law, was that only actual costs should be assessed. On the North Career project, the property owners were billed for completed costs to date plus anticipated costs. And you can see the response from Public Works is they had an agreement with the contractor that they would not go beyond those anticipated costs. But we felt it was necessary to point out that according to the law, it was supposed to be just the actual cost. And that's the only case where we saw that we may have had a difference from that actual cost. And number 3 was to determine if the special assessments were accurate and being handled correctly by all parties involved. We reviewed the calculations to see if they're using the proper costs, the square footage. It gets rather complicated, so we reviewed that. We found that to be accurate. We looked at the work that the finance department does with journal entries and that sort of thing. We found that to be accurate as well. So we had no findings there. On page 5 and 6, you'll see some opportunities for improvement. I'll just briefly explain that, and you can also see the response from Public Works. Our recommendation, our first opportunity for improvement was our recommendation that the engineer's office would consider how it assesses projects where the abutting property owner does not have immediate access. In other words, if the improvement was on the side lot or the back side of the property, they were being assessed for the improvement in the roadway. An example is the South Bonson project by 57th Street there. We felt like citizens could argue that they got no special benefit from that improvement. And during the course of this audit, there was a court case in Pierre that we became aware of where the property owners in Pierre had been successful in their argument before the court that it was a curb and gutter assessment. They were arguing that they got no special benefit from the curb and gutter, and they prevailed on that. I don't know the status of that lawsuit, and the response from Public Works is that they were aware of that court case and they were monitoring the rulings to see if that would have an impact here in Sioux Falls. And number 2, at the bottom of page 5, continuing on to page 6, we recommended that the city assess all project costs unless prevented by state law or city ordinance. And an example was the South Valley View Road project, where it was the majority of the construction costs were not being assessed to the property owners. And we just felt like that the city should assess the costs, all the costs for that improvement. And you can read the response from Public Works. They disagreed with that recommendation. And we also had another example was the oversized utilities. Currently, there's an executive order that says that the city will pick up the cost of the oversized utilities. Our argument was that you could argue that the oversized utilities in a specific area benefit only the abutting property owners and not the public at large. The Public Works disagreed with that, and you can see the written response to that. But overall, I felt it was a good audit. We were pleased by the responsiveness of Public Works and by their professionalism. And at this point, I would entertain any questions you might have, and the city engineer is also here to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Rich, on the North Career Avenue project, you mentioned that assessment was done on anticipated costs.
Yes.
Were the actual costs more than the anticipated or less? Or
Well, what it was is, I believe it was the actual cost of billed to date plus the anticipated cost, and when they came up with that anticipated cost, there was an agreement, correct me, Chad, if I'm wrong, but the city engineers had an agreement with the contractor that the anticipated costs that were on the assessment roll, that they would not go over that figure. So that, would that be fair to say, Chad?
Those anticipated costs were for some restoration, putting grass back how it was. We had very detailed plan quantities. We talked to the contractor, and that's what the quantities came out to be.
So the anticipated cost became the actual cost in reality?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Also, another question I have is in regard to the professional fees that the Public Works imposes. It says here, engineering, testing, and inspection expenses shall not exceed the amount shown in the following table. And then the table that we have before us, we have down like under $500,000.
Yes.
Actual cost up to 20%. And then actual cost up to 18%, $500,000 to $1 million, $1 million to $5 million, actual cost up to 16%, $5 million and greater, actual cost up to 14%. Was there any time when you were conducting the audit that the actual cost was less than 20% or less than 18% or less than 16%?
No.
It was always the max out.
Yes. That's what was assessed. Yeah,
Okay, I guess I'm curious about that. You would think there would be some times when it would be, a little bit less than the maximum that we allow, but it seems like it's always the max.
Well, it was a small number of projects also, so we can't say that we looked at, the last 5 years' worth of projects.
I guess my concern is this a moneymaker?
I don't think, a revenue producer for the city?
Yes.
No, I would not. In our judgment, no, it was not.
Okay. And then also, in regard to the lawsuit in Pier about, when property owners do not get any actual benefit, after conducting this audit, would you recommend to us or suggest to us that maybe the Sioux Falls City Council should not approve assessments where it does not specifically benefit the property owner, like in the case of
I think it would be better that if the city should consider that in their policy, monitor that lawsuit to see what effect that would have. Obviously, that was specific to Pier, but I would say that we recommend that the city engineers keep that in mind when they're considering any policy changes.
I would just like to add, Councilman Staggers, that I believe the case in Pier was for some curb and gutter repair. In the city of Sioux Falls, we charge the front foot assessment annually, and then those types of repairs are paid for with those funds. So we don't assess, when we go into a neighborhood to repair curb and gutter, those costs are never assessed because, and I don't believe Pier probably charges an annual frontage fee to take care of those things. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Chad, since you're up here, question. Regarding those professional fees, I'm just trying to think back. Those percentages were arrived at by a study of what the actual costs were in the engineering department, and it also went through the IRAB board, Infrastructure Review Advisory Board, approved
Yeah,
as well.
that table comes out of Chapter 38 of City Ordinance, and we looked at, historically, we always had charged 14% for fees like that. Well, when you look at projects that are several $1 million, the fee is going to be percent lower. I mean, it's not always going to be 20%. But when you're doing small projects like this, you still have to do public meetings, erosion and sediment control plans. The amount of work is always there, so the percentages usually are higher with these smaller dollar projects. And we looked at, 50 or 100 projects historically, and that's how we arrived at those percentages.
And how long ago was that?
You know, I'm going to say it was probably within the last 2 years. It's when we talked about, we made some changes to our street sections, went 5 inches of asphalt over 9 inches of base. This kind of started the whole alternative financing of infrastructure process.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chad or Councilor Litz?
Chad, I was looking at this, there's, opportunities for improvement in the recommendation here on the audit that, one example, the city picking up costs of a project when state or city or law ordinance did not preclude them from assessing costs was the South Valley View project. It says in the assessment of the project, the abutting property owners were not assessed the majority of construction costs. It was stated that the engineer staff of the realignment of the street occurred, which cut directly across the majority of abutting property owners. That was freezing construction, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and before, the street had kind of a hook in it. It was an S-shaped, which abutted the same property. Am I correct in that?
It was more of an L shape that came south from 12th Street, and then that
So
was on the right of way.
I'm aware you put a southeast angle at it, but it says in here that Friesen did the work on his own property. Is that correct?
Correct.
It was a public property. I mean, it was a public project, but it was at a private street down there.
It's not, we hired a consultant to design the road. It's a public street, and we followed all state bid laws.
So were there other bids in on this, and Friesen got the bid? Is that how that worked?
Oh, yeah.
How come these, sooner or later, you would have improved that road, whether the S-hook was in it or you cut it diagonally. As a matter of fact, when you cut it diagonally, I would say there's probably a few feet less of road in there. Why weren't these people that abutted it, why are they different than any place else that gets a new road put in?
There was a significant crash history. People coming south from 12th Street, before they got to that L, there was a trailer court there. And we had numerous accidents where we had put up Jersey barriers, guardrail, keeping people from going. I won't say they actually hit the trailers, but they would miss that turn for whatever reason, whatever time of day they were driving. We saw it as a safety hazard, and also there was, property damage every year with accidents. So that's why we contributed to
So
that.
it was in the interest of safety that the city realigned that street then, that was your main reason?
For the
it,
general
correct?
traveling public.
Okay, so that benefited the public. I'm having trouble getting past why he got to do the work on his own project. I mean, that to me almost seems like a conflict of interest. If I've got property out there and I bid it and I get the job from the city, just the appearance's sake of that. I mean, to me, I have trouble with that one.
And I guess we had no, we followed the state bid laws, and we had no reason to determine their bid was ineligible.
And then they don't get assessed on it either. There's no assessments for the property, or the money that we spent on it.
There was some assessments.
What would the assessments be on that, Chad?
We assessed $168,000 out of the $433.
Very good. And what was that for underground, or was that for the road surface? Do you know exactly what it was, or?
If I can't tell you, I mean, we went through this, I think, when we approved it at council, but if there was, I know they were assessed for sidewalk that was put in. I don't know if there were streetlights there before. If there wasn't, they were assessed for streetlights. There was some water main assessments.
Okay. The road that was there before was gravel, wasn't it?
It was paved.
Okay.
But it was a rural section with no curb and gutter.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you, Chad.
Chad, just to be perfectly clear on that, the project was bid, Friesen Construction was the lowest bid, and they were the lowest qualified bidder, I assume. And so were there multiple bids, do you recall?
Yes.
So it would have been like any other project for the city.
Yeah, we concluded there was no violation of city or state law. I mean, they followed the law. So it was just, it does raise an eyebrow, though.
Any other questions for Rich or Chad?
Just a reminder for the public, if they want to see audit reports that we've done in the past, they can go to siouxfalls.org, click on City Council on the left-hand side, and then click on Internal Audit on the left-hand side of the following screen. They should be able to pull up any of their audit reports.
Councilor Knudsen?
I guess just a comment. Also, I realized that recently Rich sent an email around to all of us just asking us if we had ideas for next year for audit ideas, to be sure and turn those in. And so I'm just saying, too, if there are people out in the listening public that have any ideas for us as far as areas they would like us to audit, that they could share those ideas with a city councilor.
Any other comments? Any other open discussion for the council before we adjourn?
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Councilor Knudsen?
I was just going to say, I think the very first Green Ival down at Falls Park on Saturday was quite successful. I was there for quite a while, and soon after I arrived there, 2 total strangers came up to me and said, well, we should do this twice a year. I mean, they were just that enthused about it, and sometimes it takes, a few years for an activity or an event to, get that popular. But anyway, I was really pleased with the feedback, and I thought that was a really nice turnout, and I'd like to just thank the Public Works people, particularly Amy Ladonsky, and the volunteers. There were many volunteers. I mean, Augustana was there, Mitchell Technical Institute was there. I mean, it was just a really nice cross-section of businesses that are involved in environmental efforts in our area.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned.